Donald Trump just pulled a copper pipe out of America's economy, went and handed it a 50% tax bill. That's not a joke. On live TV, Trump announced, "We're doing copper 50%, like he was ordering lunch, not detonating global trade. And Wall Street, it panicked faster than a squirrel near a lawnmower.
And various couple of other things, big ones. We did steel, as you know, they're 50%. We did aluminum, 50%. Lumber just came out.
That's copper.
And we did cars. And now, today we're doing copper.
What would that tariff be on? The section
I believe the tariff on copper, we're going to make it 50%.
50%.
Within minutes, copper futures in New York shot up to $5.95 per pound, a price no one's ever seen. Not in 10 years, not in 100. That's a 13% jump in a single day, the steepest in copper's trading history. And yes, that includes the 1980s when everything was weird and sweaty. Now here's the kicker. US copper is trading 25% higher than copper in London. That's not a gaps, it's a canyon. Big enough for traders to drive truckloads of profit right through the middle, while American manufacturers foot the bill. But the shock doesn't stop at the stock exchange. It hits hardest in Canada, which, by the way, sends $9.3 billion worth of copper into the US supply chain every year. Most of it travels from Quebec to Asian smelters before looping back into American factories. That loop just broke. Now, Ottawa faces a nasty choice. Eat the cost of Trump's surprise tariff or build a brand new trade route that skips over US buyers entirely. Either option forces Canada to rewire its copper lifeline overnight. Meanwhile, American consumers are already paying the price. According to Cox Automotive, even a 25% copper duty tax on about $6,000 to the price of a Canadian-built car. That's before we even hit Trump's 50% figure, which could push that number into five-figure territory. And for what? A chest-thumping press conference? Suddenly, your next new car could come with a tariff surcharge bigger than your old down payment. And just wait till we talk about your electric bill, because this wasn't a policy, it was a punch. A deliberate shockwave delivered with zero coordination that threatens everything from cars to cables. And the worst part? This was just Trump's opening move. Coming up, we expose the real strategy behind the chaos, the pressure first, deal later model straight from Trump's playbook, and the billion-dollar backlash already brewing in Canada, Asia, and beyond. And here's the question every voter should be asking before this spirals even further. Are we really ready to pay thousands more just to fund another one-man trade war? Drop your comment. And before we continue, click subscribe below. We don't sugarcoat. We don't protect politicians. We expose what others won't. At 7 p.m. on July 10th, Trump signed a Section 232 proclamation slapping a 50% tariff on all imported copper starting August 1st. The reason, according to the White House, it's about national security. That's right, copper. The same metal in your lamp wires and toaster. Apparently, it's now a battlefield asset, but buried in the fine print is something even more bizarre. The US imported 810,000 tons of refined copper in 2024. So this security measure is basically taxing half the metal American factories need to function. It's like cutting off your own oxygen because someone else is breathing too loudly. And here's the twist. The White House quietly moved the deadline to negotiate deals from July 9th to August 1st. That gives Canada, China, and the EU just 3 weeks to come crawling back and beg for mercy. Sound familiar? Trade lawyers call it pressure first, bargain later. Or in plain English, slam the door, then sell the doorknob. But here's the thing. The damage was already in motion. Even before this copper grenade, US import duties had already climbed to 16%, the highest they've been since the 1930s. Now, with copper thrown in, the International Chamber of Commerce warns we could hit 20%, a tariff wall we haven't seen in 90 years. Markets reacted like they'd been tasered. Copper futures on COMEX spiked over 12%, smashing records. Shares of US mining giant Freeport-McMoRan got a quick boost. But up north, Canada's TSX Materials Index fell sharply, a warning sign that both sides of the border are getting whiplashed by Trump's trade tantrum. And Canada? Oh, they felt the quake first. Last year, Canada refined about 1/4 of all US copper imports. That's not a side gig, that's a supply line. Now it's under siege. Prime Minister Mark Carney said Canada will use every legal and diplomatic tool available to defend its industries. That includes WTO lawsuits, retaliation, and this is big, cutting the US out altogether. The private sector is already one step ahead. Teck Resources, Canada's major miner, isn't waiting for lawyers. They've already started rerouting shipments to Asia, locking in port space and warehouses in South Korea. According to CEO Jonathan Price, that plan was activated back in March. The moment Trump lifted tariffs on aluminum, you could say Canada saw this punch coming, and that's the real story here. This isn't just some copper tax, it's a protectionist thunderclap that jolts the entire North American supply chain. It raises the average US tariff to Hoover-era levels, disrupts auto production, and sours relations with America's #1 supplier. Coming up next, how this one tariff is now ricocheting through electric vehicles, grid upgrades, and even ammunition stockpiles, and why Canada's pivot to Asia may not just be a plan B, it might be permanent. Because if the US keeps slapping tariffs like it's tossing darts at a map, the next thing to disappear might not be copper, it might be the customers. Stick around, hit subscribe, and drop a comment below. Do you think Trump is protecting American industry, or just torching the bridge to our biggest trading partner? Within 48 hours, Trump's copper tariff didn't just rattle markets, it blew them wide open. On July 8th, US copper futures exploded again, jumping over 12%, hitting $12,330 per metric ton. That's the fastest surge traders have seen since the Hunt brothers silver squeeze back in the 1980s. And back then, at least they pretended to have a strategy. Now, it's a free-for-all. Over in London, copper prices didn't spike nearly as high. That created a cross-Atlantic price gap of $1,600 per ton, wide enough to fund an entire smelting run just by shipping copper to the US and cashing in on the difference. Shipping routes flipped overnight. New Orleans warehouses saw a 40% surge in inbound copper cathode. Meanwhile, LME stockpiles of the global metal reserve started draining fast as copper raced toward the US, where the prices were juiced and the panic was real. But the real mess is downstream. Take electric vehicles. The average EV uses 80 kilograms of copper, about 4 times more than a gas car. So every time copper goes up just 5 cents per pound, the cost of building an EV jumps by $90. Multiply that by every Tesla rolling out of Fremont and you're talking millions in monthly extra costs, all thanks to Trump's tariff tantrum. Ford is already warning suppliers, get ready for higher prices in August, and it doesn't stop with cars. Every mile of high voltage power line uses nearly 5 tons of copper. Biden's grid upgrade plan just got hundreds of millions more expensive. And who pays that bill? Not Trump, you do, through rate hikes, project delays, and construction slowdowns. So what's Canada doing while the US spirals? They're pivoting, and fast. Teck Resources is now shipping copper concentrate straight to South Korean smelters, bypassing the US entirely. And they're locking in futures contracts on the Shanghai Exchange, effectively kicking the US out of the loop. Canada's trade minister told Parliament that retaliation is on the table, but behind closed doors, the faster solution is clear. Look east, not west. Diplomats say WTO action would take years, and by then, the copper supply chain will already be living somewhere else. Analysts at UBS are already sketching out worst-case scenarios. If copper stays elevated, above $1,000 premium per ton, US manufacturers could be on the hook for $4.2 billion in extra costs this quarter alone. That hit, it could shave half a point off America's Q4 GDP. That's not economic strategy, that's economic self-sabotage. And the irony? Canada tried to avoid this. Back on June 30th, Prime Minister Carney scrapped a 3% digital services tax, a move expected to save US tech giants about $5.9 billion over 5 years, just to keep trade talks alive. The White House smiled, took the win, and then on July 8th turned around and slapped copper with a 50% tariff anyway. Now they're warning Canada, sign a deal before July 21st, or pharmaceuticals could face 200% tariffs. That's not a trade policy, that's a shakedown. Canada is the #2 supplier of refined copper to the US, making up 17% of imports last year, according to USGS, and much of that copper takes the scenic route, mined in British Columbia, shipped to Asia, then sent into US factories. Trump's tariff, it gums up that entire route, which brings us to the breaking point. A single EV already eats 80 kilograms of copper. Add Trump's tariff and the surcharge alone jumps $220 per vehicle, with no domestic supply ready to fill the gap. US manufacturers are boxed in. And now, so are voters. Because this isn't just about cars, it's about your home, your electric bill, and your ability to afford either. And if Canada hits back with its $125 billion counterstrike, this won't be a trade dispute. It'll be economic shock therapy, and you'll feel it every time you shop, drive, or flip a light switch. So what now? Will Trump back off? Or gamble? The working class will pay the price for his trade war cosplay. Drop your prediction in the comments. Handshake or full-blown showdown? And hit subscribe if you're tired of tariffs dressed up as patriotism. Because this story, it's only just heating up.